Hello everyone, welcome back again to my channel, Yam Heam TV 25. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you so much. So now let's discuss about the assessment changes to support learning during pandemic crisis. Due to the pandemic, there was a conclusive gap between the stakeholders, especially the students and education. This gap was bridged through the implementation of online learning. Online learning may be the best option we have for now. Still, we can't help but wonder how everyone is adjusting and coping with the problems that arise while attending online classes, especially during synchronous classes. Synchronous classes are classes conducted in real time, and during this time, a lot of problems arise. Sadly, most of these problems are technical. Based on the study of Amadora 2020, these are the common problems encountered during online classes. It includes internet connection, audio clarity, outdated device and software, system glitch, and short attention span. But my discussion would definitely be focused on the changes in the assessment during pandemic and the possible drivers behind the assessment-related changes made. I will include also the concerns and issues about the effect of the changes and the changes that need to be continued to support learning. My study was supported by the study of Jankowski 2020 that assessment changes to support learning was made in response to the abrupt change after shifted into online classes. She added that there are many institutions that reported that made assessment changes in response to COVID-19. The vast majority of colleges changed their assessment practices after courses shifted online. This study was conducted to determine the assessment changes to support learning during pandemic crisis. Specifically, it sought to answer the following questions. First, what are the changes in the assessment and learning during pandemic? Second, what are the possible drivers behind the assessment-related changes made? Third, what are the concerns and issues about the effect of the changes, and what changes that need to be continued to support learning? This study employed mixed method research design, the quantitative and qualitative approaches, to determine the assessment changes and also the concerns and issues about the effect of the changes during pandemic crisis. Quantitative approach, since it exactly included numerical and quantifiable data in a systematic way of investigation of phenomena. And qualitative approach was also employed because the researcher conducted focus group discussion with some respondents. The respondents of the study were the students, teachers, administrator, academic heads, and coordinators, and there were 232 total respondents of this study. The respondents were chosen through simple random sampling. This study was conducted in Cornelia Foundation College Incorporated, located at Andres Dizon Building, Pioneer Avenue, General Santos City. The researchers employed an adapted and modified questionnaire from Jankowski 2020 to determine the assessment changes made during the pandemic and the possible drivers behind the assessment-related changes made. The researcher used a yes or no question and a 5-point Likert scale to interpret the data for this part of the questionnaire. For the focus group discussion, the researcher prepared a guide questions to determine the concerns and issues about the effect of the changes and the changes that need to be continued to support learning during pandemic crisis. This was used for the further discussions that would support this study. The data of this study was gathered through online survey and also through focus group discussion. To determine the changes in the assessment and learning during pandemic, frequency count and percentage were used. To determine the possible drivers behind the assessment-related changes made, mean was used. And to determine the concerns and issues about the effect of the changes and the changes that need to be continued to support learning, qualitative response analysis was use. Cornecia Foundation College Incorporated, like other institutions in General Santos City, decided to shift from face-to-face into distance learning due to the spread of coronavirus. All institutions adopted distance learning to ensure the continuity of students' learning. The changes made in learning modalities brought also changes in the learning assessment. Through the various reading of articles and studies, there were 15 identified changes in the assessment and learning that was used for this study. In response to COVID-19, there were 94.83% changes made in the assessment and learning based on the result of the study. It is not far with the result of the study conducted by National Institute for Learning Outcomes Assessment or NILOA, which reported that 97% of the respondents made some adjustment in their assessment activities due to the pandemic. Based on the changes listed, the most often mentioned changes were modifications of assignments or assessments and acceptance of alternative assignments. If we say modification of assignments or assessments, it is the changing of the standard of measurement by altering the task or expected outcomes, and also includes the changes in courses, test presentation, location, timing, scheduling, student responses, and expectation deemed to provide access to the students to increase their participation. If we say acceptance of alternative assignments, it is allowing students to use multimedia, technology, and other resources in order to promote students' engagement and greater attention to detail, encourage creativity, and embrace challenges. It was followed by flexibility in assignments or assessment deadlines. Providing flexibility with deadlines is a way that we can promote more reasonable classrooms. It is finding ways to provide flexibility benefits all students, but especially those who live more complicated lives, especially during our current situation. Another is the periodic online multiple choice questionnaires and quizzes. On too many multiple choice tests, the questions do nothing more than assess whether students have memorized certain facts and details. But well-written questions can move students to higher order thinking such as application, integration, and evaluation. Next is the change of assessment rules or responsibilities. To determine the student learning is only one of many rules assessment plays in education. But assessments must provide ongoing measures of student performance using more than one method, be aligned with student learning outcomes, and allow students to demonstrate competency in a variety of ways. And lastly, the modification of assessment report deadlines. Since we give flexibility in assignments or assessment deadlines, there is a need also to modify assessment report deadlines to cater those students who extended their submission of their tasks. So these are the most changes made in the assessment and learning during this pandemic. It also showed that there were more than one assessment-related changes made and there was no consistency in the combination of changes made. Next, in this table, it shows the possible drivers behind the assessment-related changes made. The results revealed that the respondents agree that concerns about students' differential access to technology, including reliable internet, were determining factors in making changes. The assessment-related changes were also made to ensure the continuity of education and protection of the students. It was also undertaken to address the needs of the students, their economic status, and their ability to learn. So these are the possible drivers behind the assessment-related changes made. Based on the result of the study, there are concerns and issues about the effect of the changes made mentioned by the respondents. Concerns and issues focus on four main areas. So based on the figures that you have seen on the screen, what is the common issue that we are facing right now? Yes, you can see that some have no internet connection, and also some cannot afford to buy gadgets, and also some use outdated devices and software. So our common problems or issues here is the access to technology. Due to the rapid change brought by the pandemic, teachers and students face difficulties in the early phase of the implementation of distance learning. Poor internet connection is the most challenging at this time, especially for those who actually live in the far-flung areas. There are also some who cannot afford to buy gadgets, and some are using outdated devices and software. This was supported by the study International Staff 2019 that many of the online learning problems are due to access in a stable internet connection, finances to buy gadgets, and among others. This problem is not something that teachers can resolve. Administrators also do recognize this as a major concern. Next, we have another issue here. Try to look at the pictures. As you can see, the student has difficulty on understanding on so many tasks given by the teachers. Another, there is an unstable signal, and also a great barrier between the student and the teacher. So the main issue here is the student-teacher interaction. The respondent stated that these changes brought negative effect to the interaction between the teacher and the students. The flow of learning was literally hindered due to the unavoidable barriers in the communication. There were also instances that the students have difficulties in understanding their lessons, and it will lead them to be not responsive in doing their tasks. Unstable internet connection can also cause some misunderstanding, especially during synchronous classes. The teachers will have difficulties in identifying the needs of their students, and they are not able to address it properly. This was confirmed with the study of Torres in Select 2005 that in an online learning setting, teachers lack direct access to verbal and nonverbal feedback from their students. This feedback allows the teachers in a traditional learning setup to use verbal and nonverbal gestures to change the teaching strategy in order to meet the needs of the students. Next is another common problem that we are facing right now in assessing students' learning. So what can you see in the pictures? Yes, our common problem here is the reliability of assessment. The teachers have difficulties on the assessment of learning because they cannot assess the students properly if they have learned in their lessons. The teachers wouldn't know if the students did not relay their answers through the internet or they answered it without cheating. There are some students who are assessed by their parents in answering their activities or exams. Or some also just copy their answers from the internet. This was corroborated with a study of Arnold 2012 that in an online class wherein the students and teacher do not meet, it is more difficult to acquire reliable assessment on learning than in a traditional face-to-face classes. And lastly, it is the most common problem of students during online classes. So what can you see on the pictures? Yes, the common problem is the students' focus and attention. So nowadays, using the technology makes the students become lazy in terms of studying or learning. During online classes, there are some who do not follow the online class protocols. There are some students also that cannot concentrate doing their school tasks at home due to some responsibilities. They keep doing other tasks while attending online classes, and also, environment at home can really affect the student's behavior in learning. This was paralleled with the study of PAES 2020 that online learning does not provide any assurance that students will really pay attention or do any work at all. So these are the concerns and issues that we are facing right now due to the changes made in response to this COVID-19 pandemic. So, as had been noted, based on the data that was collected and evaluated, the following are the conclusions of the study. First, mostly of the respondents agreed to the modification of the assessments, specifically the multiple choice type of test. Next, teachers need to be flexible on giving deadlines on the submission of these assessments. And another, most of the respondents agreed to accept alternative assignments such as the use of multimedia, technology, and other resources to promote students' engagement. And generally, stakeholders have a different access to technology, and reliable internet resulted to hinder the student-teacher interaction, reliability of assessment, and students' focus and attention. In response to the specific outcomes and conclusions of this study, the following recommendations were suggested. First, teachers need to be considerate on giving deadlines on students' assignments or assessments. Next, encourage students to develop a higher order thinking skills by giving an assessment that promote analysis, comprehension, application, and reasoning. And lastly, promote academic honesty by encouraging paraphrasing and provide proper citations. So that ends my discussion. Thank you so much.
Disappear.